So hello and welcome back to the channel, and we'll continue our work on a model, and we left off with, well, just that clicking on the overlay we can close the model, clicking on the button we can open it. The aim of today's episode is to introduce some kind of, let's say, responsive web design for a model so that it can be displayed differently on the mobile resolutions, as well as adding the button here. User can click to close it. And I know that user can click outside in the overlay to close the model, but I believe that's a good UI to have an additional button to close it. So let's start with something simple. Let's go to our base model wrapper, and we'll add here an optional prop. Well, let's start with adding a header, because having just a statical header here is not really good. It's better to provide one, and I assume you always need a title for a model, right? You can do this real easy. Let's use it here, and then we have to obviously pass the header. Let's say, for example, login. That should be good enough. And as I don't remember if I mentioned it before, but this approach is one of two approaches you may see in the app when it comes to logging the user in. One approach is to have it done like Netflix, when you're forced to log in from the start to access any content. The other way is the approach you probably have already seen in YouTube, when even if you're not logged in, you have access to some random or demo content, and after logging in, the content is being adjusted to your preferences, or you get an access to some additional features. Okay, we have the header. We can also specify an optional message here to display to the user, and we'll render it conditionally. So only if the message is available, we will render the message inside message component. So let's unpack that. This is good, but we need the message component. And it should look something like, let me check. Okay, it should be something like this. We will use a paragraph, create that. We need to specify the color for text, and that's going to be gray. Font size is not so important, but it's cool to have something nice. And margin, let's say, and align. Actually, that's not a good number. One rule of thumb you might want to use from time to time is to have your paddings and margins that are dividable by 4. So let's go with 36. And text align center. Then we can import it. Bump this up a little bit so that everyone can see. Okay, now we have that, and we pass some kind of message, for example, oops, not here, message, I don't know, please log in, then it shows. And that's great. So let's try with the close button for now. Okay. So we have the container, which is good. And then we'll need something like close button component for that, and close sign. And we'll make the X icon for the close button using CSS only. You could use stuff like SVG, font icon, or even PNG, but this is such a simple thing that it can be achieved in CSS rather easily. So let's go with that. We need the component for the button, and then we need the close sign itself. So let's create close button for now. It's gonna be a styled div, and it's fine. You can use div to also be clickable stuff too, even it's not really semantically correct. We will have to position absolute it because it has to be in a corner of our model with, well, we can just define the variable const close button size, and this is going to be 40 pixels. I mean 40. Okay, and then we can just use close button size. Actually, yeah, we can write it like that, and it should work. Height close. It's gonna be square. Background color, I'll make it gray, and it's gonna be C8 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 color. That should be cool. Since we're making it circular, we will specify the border radius to be 50% and cursor pointer. Okay. We can also change the opacity a little bit just to inform the user that he's hovering over it. So we can make something like this. And any child should have opacity set to 1. And if you hover over it, any child have an opacity of 0.4. That should be good. Okay, now this is a good base, but we will be making it different between desktop and mobile. Therefore, I will adjust it slightly by building desktop close button, the desktop close button. Okay, this is styled close button, so it will inherit all of the properties from the close button, but we have to specify the top value. It's gonna be minus close button size by 2 pixel. Come on. Fakes. Meaning we want to place it, if you look at our model, we want to place it in the right top corner, right? Therefore, we have to push it from the top a little bit. And also calculate the left value, which is going to be 100% minus close button size split into 2 fakes. And that should be good for now. So let's see how does it look in our base model wrapper. Let's leave that for now. And just we'll render that here. Give me that. That's okay. Desktop close button. That's fine. And yeah, you see, we have that circle here now, which will work as our close button. And if you can see right here, I can move it along the edge with the top value. If I specify that to be 0, the top edge of our circle would match the top edge of our model. Therefore, we have to push it to a negative value, which is a half of its size, which is basically this value is a radius of our circle. And also for the left, if we don't specify it, we'll render at the middle of our model. Okay, and of course I could push it along the x axis by changing that value. Okay, so we have that done, which is not everything I'd like to do, because we need the X sign inside. So let's bring that here, and the close sign. Well, this is actually pretty cool because we can make it using only CSS. So maybe not here. Everything related to close button. Here, export cons close sign. This is style div, right? This is top 0, bottom 0, bottom 0, left 0, left, and right 0. Okay. The color is 32, 32, 32. And now is a catch. We will use the pseudo elements before and after to create the 2 horizontal lines, right? And then we'll rotate one line 45 degrees, and the second line will rotate minus 45 degrees. So together they will create an X. Okay, so let's start with saying that before, excuse me, sir, for and after, we need position absolute, left 9 pixels, top 10 pixels. We need to provide the content for its render, even if it's empty. And we specify the height to be 20 pixels and width to be 2 pixels and background color of free. Okay, let's see how it looks right now. Okay, so you can see, okay, sorry, this is not a horizontal line, this is a vertical line, right? And come on, where are you? Here. I see one here and one here, right? So let's take one and transformation, no transition, but transform rotate 45 degrees. Okay, if we do that here, and so that's that, and we'll now change it to minus 45 degrees, you can see that we can rotate it any way we'd like. So if we rotate one in the one direction and the second in the opposite direction, we should get the X that we wanted. So this is before, and we'll transform rotate 45 degrees, and then after transform rotate minus 45 degrees, and that will leave us with a perfect X, and it does change its opacity when you hover over it. That's kind of cool. What can we do here? We'll also say that this should also trigger on back drop click. Now you can close your model by clicking X. So that's great. That's beautiful. It's just wonderful. Okay. Now that's really cool, but next step is to introduce a little bit of responsive web design. So when we get to a reasonable threshold, let's say maybe 580 is a good value, right? I would like to change how our model is getting displayed. And I would like to stick it to the button, you know, like the drawers that sometimes pop up on Android. Okay. So how to approach this? Well, we can use a very cool package called React Responsive. So let's add that. And types for it, obviously. And I will create a new component, and I will call it RWD Modal for responsive web design. Fill it in. Okay. This is cool. And yeah, we'll just use that. So one of the basic components that you get from React Responsive is media query. Okay. And here you can specify for which value it should trigger, and I'm going to use min width of 580. And it uses render props pattern to do stuff differently. So let's drop that here. And here you get value matches, meaning whether we match given media query. And you can return one thing. And here you can render the other. So just for kicks, let's render something here and another thing here. Okay, and if we use that in our app, you will see how it works. Okay, so we're rendering something here, and if you hit the threshold, it switches to another thing. Kind of great. So we can render different components based on the changing resolution of your screen. It's really cool. So now, if you think about how our model should change, it it's not actually a different component that I would like to render. It is the same. It's the very same component, but with a different container and maybe a different close button. That should change, given that the resolution is changing. So I would somehow would like to reuse what we already have, but change its container and the close button. And there's a really cool approach you can use here, because you can pass components to a different component to render, but not as a children, as an option. Let me show you. We'll have to start with our base model wrapper, and I will change a few things. I will declare another interface. I will call this components props. And the stuff that I would like to change is the container component and close button component. And here is a place to decide what kind of types this should be. So if we're passing a component, this should be a React component type. And this is a generic type. So you can provide a type here to describe the props that the component you will be passing to another component should use, and no props for that one. And for the close button component, I would like it to be also component type, but here we'll specify a type on click. It's gonna be mouse event handler, and let's provide any here. Okay, so you know there should be an optional on click handler. Okay, and now we'll combine these two types, these two interfaces, into one type. Let's call it just props, and this is going to be base model wrapper props and components props together. And let's use that. Okay, this is fine. Now let's unpack our components, so container component and close button component. This is cool, and you know we'll just use it. Nothing fancy here. But this is container component, and this is close button component. This will force us to change stuff a little bit here. For starters, we'll no longer use base model wrapper, but RWD model. So here we'll use base model wrapper, of course. Now we will have to do a little bit of magic with props, because we will specify here close button component to be something and container component to be something, but then we need to pass the other props that are still missing. For example, is modal visible, on backdrop click, header, and so on. So I will say that RWD model props are actually a type, and they are very much the same as base model wrapper props, which we need to export. That gets exported. Get rid of this and this, since this will be provided by the parent component. Oh, come on, help me out here. Okay, so we have that, and I'm not going to unpack it, because if we specify this as unpacked object. I can then just spread it here. Now is the time to provide proper values here. So that's going to be desktop close button and desktop modal container. Great. Now the one change we need is to change that to be RWD model. And let's see how that works. So let's show modal. This is looking great. And here we're rendering another thing, but this is still good, right? You can see one interesting thing about portals. If we are rendering the model, we're rendering it in a different route because we used create portal here. Then if we get into the mobile resolution, we're rendering the second thing from the RWD model, but it is rendered in the root, in the main root of React. Okay, this is cool, but one thing we need to finish that is to build a mobile container and close button. So let's get to our styles. So for the mobile close button, it's gonna be rather easy because it's pretty much the same. Mobile close button extends the close button. Do not transform. Okay. Top is pretty much the same. And since it is, I can slap it here because these values are pretty much the same. The difference is in the left value, and this is close button size times 1.5 and at 10 pixels. This is looking good. I don't know why that should be blue. But hey, it works. Okay. For the mobile container, we would like to have it at the bottom. So that's going to be a little bit different. We'll export const mobile modal container, and this is style modal container, and this has position fixed, bottom left right, width is 100% through the whole screen, padding has 15, well, let's go with 16 pixels, min height gonna be 160 pixels, and font size say 26. Okay, and now we can use that here. This is the very same component. It works and behaves the same way, but the props are the component props are changed to be mobile close button and mobile modal container. See how it works. So here I am still in the desktop resolution, and when we hit the threshold, this stays at the bottom. See, so this is cool. It should still work as expected, showing at the very bottom. Yeah, so this is how you can approach building your Modal for responsive web design using the component props. I believe this is a good approach to know. Good, let's say, I don't want to say hack, but a good pattern to know in React, where you can pass components to another component. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.